Stanisław Masłowski was a Polish painter, born Stanislaw Stefan Zygmunt Ludgard Masłowski, Polish painter of realistic style, the author of genre scenes and landscapes. Biography. Stanisław Masłowski was born on 3 December 1853 in Włodawa on the Bug River, and was christened 8 May 1854. His certificate of baptism is stored in the archives of the parish of St. Louis of Pauline Fathers in Włodawa. He came from an impoverished noble family, which originates from ULAN. Masłowski family used the nickname Water of Ruda. Zygmunt Glodger in his Historic Geography of Ancient Polish Lands repeats after Jan Długos that the first capital of ULAN county was Ruda before ULAN, which was more conveniently located. Masłowski was the son of Zygmunt Masłowski and Waloria Józefa of Danilewicz. His brother was Bolesław Masłowski, chemist. Masłowski's grandfather from his mother, Wincenty Danilewicz, was involved as light cavalryman in the Napoleonic campaign, for which he was awarded the French Order of Legion of Honor. Masłowski's father was a lawyer. He was promoted several times, changing with his family place of residence. Włodawa, place of birth of the future artist, was one of many towns where his father was employed. Masłowski family moved in 1856 from Włodawa to Garwolin, where Zygmunt served as a courtroom writer. In 1858 to 1865 Masłowski lived in Chesony. It is worth noting that Zygmunt Masłowski in January uprising was the head of the Chesony district. Therefore, in mid-1864 he was arrested, and then about 6 months he spent in prison in Kielce. Since 1865 Masłowski lived in Kalisz, where his first drawing teacher in the local high school was painter Stanisław Masłowski, a graduate of Warsaw School of Fine Arts. During this period, Masłowski drew a lot from nature, including between 1865 to 1871 in Bronnau near Podobice to father's friends Maria and Jarosław Konopnicki. See story by Konopnicka. How the children in Bronnau with Rosalia entertained, where one of these children was Stas, the future artist, and then in Jedrzejów, where lived Wincenty Danilewicz, his grandfather. He was also copying Julius Kossak's pictures from illustrated magazines. Art studies. Since 1871 Stanisław Masłowski lived in Warsaw, where his father was transferred by court administration. His studies at the Warsaw School of Drawing lasted perhaps permanently in 1871 to 1875. In this school I received, finds the artist in an autobiographical note, the advice of Mr. Gerson and Mr. A. Kamiński. In 1875 Masłowski received the Silver Medal of the Academy of Fine Arts in St. Petersburg as an award for his school drawings. During this period he took an active part in the life of the famous atelier rented by a group of artists painters, J. Chelmonsky, S. Witkowicz, A. Piotowski and others in the Hotel Europejski in Warsaw. Sincere affection for his colleagues from Europe remained him for the rest of his life. However, it was Ukraine which gave to young Masłowski many painting emotions. For the first time he went there accompanied by writer Edward Klopicki. The second trip took place in 1876. The next trips took place at least in 1878 and 1886. In 1884 to 1887 Stanisław Masłowski entered a new phase of creativity and a new environment. At that time, he developed close relations with the group of friendly painters and writers associated with Wędrownik weekly magazine, including Aleksander Gierymski and Antoni Siedziatyński, and young painters, Józef Prankiewicz and Władysław Podkowinski. In 1886 Masłowski spent half a year in Munich, where, as he writes, worked at home. Quote, in Masłowski's creativity, years 1890 to 1907 was called a period of the storm and ferment. Its initial phase is characterized by transition through Impressionism and get away from it to find his own form. In 1897 Stanisław Masłowski became a member of the Society of Polish Artists (SZ2K) in Kraków, created at the initiative of Jan Stanisławski. A number of artists came from Warsaw, e.g., Joseph Prankowicz and Konstanty Laszczyzka. In 1899 Masłowski issued a number of watercolors in Alexander Krewald Salon. This year and in 1902 he took part in the exhibitions of the Vienna Secession. In 1900 he traveled to Italy and Paris. In 1900 at the Universal Exhibition in Paris, he gained a medal award for picture The Market in the Kazimierz. In 1901 he demonstrated a small watercolors in the Chimera monthly editorial collective exhibition. In 1902 in the Zakata ends the second phase of Masłowski's creative explorations. The restless period of 1902 to 1907 points out the artist's first trip in 1903 to Wola Rafalowska between Minsk Mazowiecki and Siedlce, where he soon found his synthesis of his Polish landscape. In the following year he began a series of trips to Italy, in 1904 to Rome, Florence, Fiesole, but also to Trocchi near Wilno. The special exhibition on Zakata demonstrated Masłowski's 58 watercolors. In 1905 to 1907 Masłowski worked in his atelier in Warsaw and experimented. Period of 1907 to 1926 was a phase of prosperity and decline of Masłowski's creativity. Kleiner in Nowozielka in Volhynia in 1908 brought 18 watercolors, which then was exhibited in the Society for the Encouragement of Fine Arts. In 1909 and 1910 Masłowski had a solo exhibition there, and then exhibited there annually until 1914 the landscapes from Italy, Tunisia and from Polish village Wola Rafalowska. In 1913 Masłowski arranged a small exhibition of watercolors in the Gallery Elia Couteau en Marseille in Paris. In June 1914 Masłowski received an invitation to taking a position as professor at the Warsaw School of Fine Arts. However, he not accepted the proposition. The outbreak of the World War I found him in the country. In April 1916 the Society for the Encouragement of Fine Arts arranged Masłowski's big collective exhibition. In December of that year he received the Jubilee Award of Society for the Encouragement of Fine Arts. The end of the war in 1918 brought great moral relaxation. Masłowski then painted a picture, Balinusi. Interwar period. In 1921 Masłowski was elected a member of the Société Nationale des Beaux-Arts in Paris. In 1922 he made another trip to Italy. In 1925 a Jubilee exhibition of Masłowski's works was held in the Society for the Encouragement of Fine Arts. The next year, Society for the Encouragement of Fine Arts issued a premium reproduction of his painting Haremas Duma. In 1925 Masłowski was awarded Officer's Cross of Polonia Restituta. In the last year of life, suffering from a heart disease, he little worked. He died the 31st of May 1926 in Warsaw and was buried at the Pałki Cemetery in Warsaw, in the tomb of his mother's family. A free time Masłowski was spending on your favorite readings of both the Old Polish literature and foreign, mostly French or Italian. A peculiar fruit of his reading was a translation into Polish publish of Giorgio Vasari's lives of the most eminent painters, sculptors, and architects. He was married to Aniela Poniatowska, sister of Cezary Poniatowski, lawyer, the first president of the Supreme Advocates Council in Poland. They had son Maciej Masłowski, an art historian. Works. Masłowski's artistic talent occurred already at an early age. He received a silver medal in 1975 from the Academy of Fine Arts in St. Petersburg for his school drawings. Masłowski recalls Henryk Piatkowski, while still very young boy, as a student at the Warsaw School of Drawing, marked his outstanding talent in the first creative gusts, and adds that he learned mostly not in school, but in the environment of Polish nature, which he felt and spoke with the mastery. These observations complements and confirms relation of his fellow Milosz Kotarbiński, in which we can read of the very distinctive in school, and not yet appreciated Stanisław Masłowski. He was already a naturally born impressionist. Studies on the plaster casts of classical sculpture he led in purely impressive mode, in which forgiving executives completely did not complain. With vividly colorful and scenic landscape studies of nature he overtook most ardent later impressionists. The year 1875 brought in Masłowski's life the first images exhibited in the Society for the Encouragement of Fine Arts, namely, Ocherek and Kozłowie. Then, the first illustrations included in the Kozłowie weekly magazine, and the first trip to Ukraine. Ukrainian topic had a strong influence on Masłowski in his youth. It was carrying parallel, blustering vigor and lyrical musing. That was the Ukraine which Masłowski saw and began to enact in his studio compositions. It was unlike the painting of the noble knights and hunters Ukraine by Julius Cossack, Joseph Brandt and Joseph Chelmonsky. Numerous images of Ukrainian themes may be mentioned. Odbyshi Branki, Pozegnani Kozaka, Haremas Duma, Klorp CW Stepi, NOC, Taban, Odpoczynek Zumarka, Wesler, Odpoczynek, and finally, Denis Kozakov, which is a kind of closure and synthesis of the whole. This, however, does not exhaust the subject matter and the topography of Masłowski's paintings created in atelier in early stages of his work. It happens a Masovian village, and even melodrama, but still the Ukraine was the main emphasis of his contemporary work. Masłowski's studio painting of this period cannot be reduced to a common denominator. His realism has a number of additions, closer to the romantic sentiments, or closer to the truth of nature. Generally speaking, Masłowski's way goes from linearity to ornamentation, from value to color, from oil to watercolor, and in total, from atelier to plein air. The most interesting result of the Ukrainian and other Masłowski's expeditions were quite precursory studies and sketches from nature, watercolors, pencils, and oils, including Trochę Studium Konia, Zima, Cyganka, Studium Jamnika, Shateniaki, Studium PSA, Glowy Bykov, Oset. Their cognitive function rapidly transformed and expanded. One of the most interesting studies arose during a few days' stay in the gypsy camp behind the Warsaw-Prague Turnpike. But first fame, and even financial success, brought him no pioneer minor sketches, but Duma Jeremy and Denis Kozakov. In 1884–1887 Stanisław Masłowski entered into a new phase of creativity. He came into a close relationship with a fellow group of painters and writers associated with Włodawa weekly magazine. with Alexander Gierymski and Antony Siedzietiński, with young Joseph Pankiewicz and Władysław Podkowinski. This period already in 1884 resulted in large oil composition done in the atelier, which is a landscape entitled W.S. Chodkazia Zika. In Masłowski's painting now pushed to the fore the problem of light in the night and day, the color issue parallel to the value question. Masłowski's painting underwent profound changes during this period. This is evidenced also by following paintings: W.S. Chodslonka and next, Zachodslonka, Targnar Mary and Stacy Polony. These images pave Masłowski's way to Impressionism. Gerson in Criticism from the year 1888 notes, Mr. Masłowski sent to the exhibition at Mazowian Cottage a watercolor painting of rare beauty and strength. Gerson sees in it a lot of brightness, richness, strength of color, plasticity. At this time a new topic appears in Masłowski's works, the city of Warsaw. Particularly interesting came out in numerous notes from A and Gate Square in Warsaw. For this period come numerous watercolor studies of Masovia, picking Masłowski in a row of the first Polish pliant RISDS and Impressionists. Masłowski's work in the years 1890 to 1907 were a period of storm and ferment. Quote, its initial phase was to go through Impressionism, and then move away from it in search of its own, separate forms. The first attempt towards a new image was reportedly Pocztlian, and then Targnar Gryboi, Ostatni Promeny, Przed Parborem. Next years brought a numerous and still anew trials and experiments, ranging between Impressionism and Neo-Romanticism. In 1893 Masłowski issued Italia, Stare Miasto, and Poranek, and in 1894 Mickiewicz and Maryla and Porwony. In 1895 Wiosna. In 1896 Sprawa o Granist and Boshny. All these were big oil compositions. It seems that far-reaching attempt in the direction of divisionist, speckle technique of painting was image entitled Poranek. The year 1896 brought synthesis of previous efforts, as exemplified by two major themes, Sprawa o Granus and Boshny. Great collective exhibition in the Krewalt Exhibition Room of Art in Warsaw in 1896. Closed most turbulent phase of a new period of Masłowski's painting. Turn of the century. In 1899, Masłowski exhibited a dozen of watercolors in Krewalt Exhibition Room. This year and in 1902 he participated in the exhibitions of the Vienna Secession. In 1900 he traveled to Italy and Paris. In 1901, in the editorial of Chimera monthly magazine, he presented a set of small watercolors. Here are the leading Masłowski's works of these years. Of 1898 come paintings, Chart, Portrait Dziewczynki, G1-2 then of 1899, Rynek W. Kazimierzu, and Kapliczka W. Kazimierzu, and finally of 1902 a big image of Cyganka, landscapes of Rybinishki, Rona, Kamienica pod Okratem. It is worth noting that these are only watercolors. A picture, Rynek W. Kazimierzu, was awarded the medal on the Universal Exhibition in Paris, a collective show of his paintings in 1902. In the Zakata ends the second phase of Masłowski's explorations. Of the numerous reviews deserves reminder Enia Wiadomski's sentence, Masłowski's place will be in the same series, in which were artists otherwise of different measure, Cossack, Julius Maciejko, Grotga, Chelmonski, Pajkowski. He is a national artist through and through. National are the motives of his works and the concepts, the national temperament, life gushing from images, color strength. In 1903 Masłowski tried his hand in decorative arts, painting a ceiling in the ballroom and chapel choir in a palace at Suprasil. The special exhibition in the Zakręta demonstrated 58 Masłowski's watercolors. In 1905 to 1907 Masłowski worked experimenting in his Warsaw studio. He did illustrations for Pantadosh, as well as other figure compositions. For instance, a full of rhythm and expressive image of Pijani Klopi, the scene of the revolution of 1905, Patrol Kozak, also known as Wiosna 1905 or Wit 1906, picture appears YTO, and rare attempt of symbolism in Masłowski's work Wyatinia Setuki. In autumn of 1907 the charming landscapes of Radziachowice was created, combining graphic lines with the painterly clarity of stains, such as Bond in Radziachowice, Kleiner in Nowoziolka on Volhynia. In 1908 brought 18 watercolors exhibited in the Zakręta Society for the Encouragement of Fine Arts. As already mentioned, in 1909 and 1910 took place Masłowski's individual exhibitions in the Zakręta. For this period originates Inter alia watercolor, entitled Maki. In the following years, until 1914, he exhibited in the Zakręta Society for the Encouragement of Fine Arts the landscapes of Italy, Tunisia and Polish of Wola Rafalovska village, including Podwars W Vilidest, Zatoka Neapolitanska, Kroik Biale Maki, Choya, Moti YWZ Taumini, Bedu Inka, Wedshida Palokyu Befha, Kawiania Arabska, and other. All of them presented an unusual wealth of color and decoration, a rare freshness and directness of vision. Examples of watercolor paintings from this period are the images of poppies and hollyhocks in the garden. There were also oil pictures at the time. Soon he returned to landscape painting. Works of this final period was uneven. The most outstanding works of this time include watercolor paintings from a trip to Italy in 1922 and some landscapes of Wola Rafalovska village, such as a few from the year 1924, ULE, Gricka, and Lublin. Gallery. Bibliography